Let's move over to Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity in our 4K Switch, apparently. And that according to Bloomberg, is still happening next year. They just wanted to let us know again. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is coming out November 20th, and it's going to take place 100 years before Breath of the Wild during the Great Calamity. It's going to be a warrior-style game, though. Interesting. That is an interesting way to go about that, but it kind of makes sense because of what the Great Calamity is, or it's big battles and war and all of this going on. So, you know what? I'm on board with this one. I'm not usually a huge fan. The only real Warriors game that really pulled me in, I actually liked Hyrule Warriors. I thought that was a really fun game.
It was fun.
But this one looks like it's going to take more of a shift into storytelling compared to what we had with Hyrule Warriors. That's going to be more canon. So, like, I like the idea of trying to tell the story of the Great Calamity and set everything up for Breath of the Wild 2. But that's, I mean, Nintendo announced it, and then 2 months later, it's coming out in November. And I think that, for the most part, I would say cements their holiday, but I guess you never know with Nintendo and their third and any other partners that could be announcing. But what do you guys think of the announcement for the Age of Calamity?
Excellent.
Super shocked.
Thumbs up.
I ended up watching the reveal on a little stream that morning because I just wanted to see it live. I'm super blown away. Honestly, never saw it coming, and it looks really good.
I think it's really cool, honestly. I like the way to story tell this event that we know of and we know the results of, but to finally see a lot of these characters in action and to kind of see some characters we haven't seen before, like that new little egg version of whatever that is. But I also feel that this is also going to have a good build up to whatever 2 is going to be. Whatever the story is in 2, I think either a character or a story point is going to lead into that we don't know that happened throughout Breath of the Wild. So I think it's a really unique way to do it.
This should be a really dark story then.
This game is
we know the ending kind of already.
Yes.
Yeah. Jordan, you just made me think, what if this sets up the power of Zelda really hardcore? Because we haven't seen like her do that battle, but clearly she was strong enough to survive a fight for 100 years against Ganon or whatever. What if they're setting it up because Breath of the Wild 2, the dumb rumor that's going around is that it's co-op or 2-player where Zelda and Link both like fight through some sort of thing.
I wouldn't mind that. That'd be
Age of Calamity, maybe setting that up.
Yeah.
I just think it's cool that this is not only like a prequel to that, and it's going to start connecting this stuff. But the fact that they chose to make it a Warriors game, I think, is smart, because while the combat in Breath of the Wild is still fun, you can't use that combat to take on 100 bokoblins at once. You would constantly be dying, unless you're one of those like skilled players you see on Twitter who make those like crazy like kill things where they send something up in the air and do crazy stuff, which is impressive. But I don't know, I think it's really cool. Kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone was expecting a Zelda this year when next year is the anniversary. So
what'd you think, Miss Click?
She has a video.
Keep it short. I think that this is probably, and OJ had mentioned it too, we had talked about a long time ago wanting the champions in Smash because they could have really cool kits, especially with their specific abilities that Link can acquire. But this to me, and I was just talking about how I had been so tempted to rebuy Hyrule Warriors on Switch. I have like 1,000, 2,000 hours on Wii U. I loved it to death. It was a lot of fun. I hadn't played a Warriors game before, and though I will say it was pretty quirky and cringy, it was great. Like the main draw of that game was getting to play as characters you were never going to get to play as, and getting to see how their kits were. Like when they added in Twilight Midna for Hyrule Warriors, or Link riding on Epona and Epona's like kicking baddies in the face, like it was so cool. But what's going to be the main awesome part about this one is the fact that they're working so close with the Zelda team. It is the same engine. It is like when I finally, like, I was so busy watching it, I thought it was just cutscenes of Breath of the Wild, and then they were going to show us the Hyrule Warriors engine. And then when I realized, like, no, they were legitimately using Breath of the Wild engine for this game, this is going to be so lore heavy, and it's the first Zelda game that we actually fully get to see a battle. It's not just a prologue, it's not just a painting.
Good point.
Or the aftermath.
When the cannons, when they do like the panning of the cannons going off and the king, like talking to the army, that is such a big deal for Zelda, because I think when Twilight Princess came out, I was like, how cool would this be if you had this giant, vast open world and you got to like run alongside, or even in cutscenes, see the army going out, and you just never got that chance. So I'm very excited for this. It's going to be very sad, very depressing. But the fact that Ayonuma-san actually stood up there and talked about it really gives me faith that this is going to be beyond the cuteness that was kind of Hyrule Warriors 1. And this is going to be something that I think a lot of people will end up having fun with. And I'm really curious to see all the kits they have for the champions in their full glory, because like they're going to be OP, and it's so cool because you're going to get to see
you get to play Urbosa. That's
dude,
that's
and
all
she's
I
fighting
need.
Yiga. Like how cool is that?
You get to play
dude?
Urbosa. She's the dopest champion.
And
okay?
Mipha, sweet precious baby
she's
Mipha.
the dopest champion. And you know what? The thing about it is, like, we've had this before, right? Like in terms of you already know what's going to happen, but it's still it's super fun to set up and play. Like Xenoblade Chronicles Torna of the Golden Country was the same way. You know what happens, everything goes to hell, but you want to see what happens to Pyra and Mithra or why that even happens. And that game was awesome. So I actually like when they do stuff like this. You know you're going to lose, but how do you actually lose? You know, like
Fall of Reach.
You know, like
people are already making that meme where it says like
that,
just keep fighting.
They wouldn't.
You just keep. You fought to the end in Torna too.
But I do believe.
Very damn end.
I do believe the theory though that they wouldn't be putting as much emphasis on this foreshadowing, unless there was some context we need to see in order to make sense of Breath of the Wild 2. I genuinely think with Zelda, like we get to see the moment, like we only get a brief cutscene of her finally going up to Ganon, and then he charges at her, and that's it, and then we don't see her till after. We finally get to see the moment, like when that happens. And I genuinely think there's going to be some stuff there, to where it's going to kind of lead on to her experience that she had to go through, like leading up. Like we didn't even, like we saw her go to the Deku Tree. We didn't see her traveling with the Master Sword or anything. Like even just that by herself could be like a whole story. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of context that's going to give us more depth to her, because we did not get to know her very well outside of past Zelda. Like we don't know current Zelda and what she had to go through during that certain time. So I'm really excited. If Link and Zelda are going to be a main thing in Breath of the Wild 2, unless she gets taken right at the beginning, I mean, I think it's going to set it up really nicely and give us some more context.
So you're saying this is going to be the Metal Gear Solid 3 of Zelda, so it's going to be the prequel that makes the sequel better.
So I got a question. This Hyrule Warriors game is basically a Dynasty Warriors game with
Correct.
the Breath of the Wild skin.
Yep.
So aren't these games usually trash? Or
they're different. I will say that looking around online, there is a lot of, it's so different that it's a different style of taste. It's a different style of adventure.
It's a hack and slash.
A lot of the dungeons, I'm sure since you have like over 1,000 hours in a click, you can attest to this. Each of the levels is like 45 minutes a lot of times because you are running in circles and shit.
It depends. Like that's a game that you don't necessarily play for its big complexity. Like what you're playing for that game is for ratings. Like you're going to get the best. Yeah. You're trying to do it the fastest time, deal the most amount of damage without taking a lot of damage. You're trying to kill the most amount of enemies possible so you can get that A or that gold or platinum.
So you're more excited about the story possibilities.
This is going to be this is lore
possibility. Okay.
Yeah, like Zelda community that's really big on timeline, lore placement, wondering
they freaked
what
out
happened.
that morning,
yeah, that's the major thing is like we're going to get to see like even young Impa. Like, we see her like kneeling. I don't think it's Pyrrha, but it's kneeling next to Link in the castle. We haven't got to see what she looks like. And that was one of the biggest bothers to me is seeing all the flashbacks and never seeing Impa when she was younger once.
So in Breath of the Wild, Rand, there's they allude to a lot of things that happened during what this game is basically going to cover completely. So people are really excited and it's basically a massive event that sets up Breath of the Wild, but it's going to have an unpleasant ending, we'll say.
Everybody dies.
I have Breath of the Wild. I just haven't played it, but maybe I should wait for that 4K Switch, huh?
Oh, there you go. See,
I will say that the reason that the first Hyrule Warriors game was interesting is that it was the first time that they really just shoved all the Zelda timelines into one big ball. Yeah. So you actually saw like Zeldas from different timelines and Links from different timelines and that's all going against each other and then seeing enemies from different timelines. And even though it wasn't canon, there was even Linkle, a female Link that believes she's the hero of time, even though the hero of time is still alive, so it's not possible. Like it was so cool. And I honestly think this is going to mostly be that. I think it's going to be mostly, here's all the things that you couldn't see before but are important.
Another thing though, Rand, it's like, it's not that the games are bad, just some people get that it's like repetitive. That's the main
is.
problem. That like the controls are good, the combat's fun. There's hella stuff to do. There's a weapon fusion. There's there's levels. There's all sorts of cool stuff in the game. The problem that people find is that sometimes it just becomes a bit of a grind, just constantly doing stuff over.
And that's when it comes back to is with each different quest, you play a different. Like if you want to do the same quest over, you play a certain character with a certain weapon this one time, and then the next time you play the same character, different weapon, or you go to a different character with a totally different kit. And so you're playing as characters that you would never get a chance to, and it's really cool because they characterize it to, you know, like I laughed so hard. Again, I'll go back to Twilight Midna, where she's in her beautiful, you know, like human form or whatever, and she freaking takes the bridge leading to Kokiri Village, and she's smacking people with the bridge that she makes disappear in Twilight Princess. And if you don't play Twilight Princess, you're kind of like, why is she hitting people with a piece of bridge? But if you play Twilight Princess, you're laughing because it's like she made it disappear and she didn't even know where she sent it to, so you have to go find it, and here she is, like in the game, smacking people with it. It's just great.
Rand, you haven't felt the pull to try out Breath of the Wild or play it?
I mean,
it is one of the better looking games on the Switch in general, like in terms of like
I don't want people to hate me more than they already do when it comes to Nintendo.
They're gonna hate you regardless.
So, I've only ever played 2 Zelda games, the original and the Wind Waker.
Okay.
Because I didn't own the SNES because my parents got me a Genesis, right? So I didn't have a Super Nintendo. And I didn't have an N64 because I had a PlayStation 1. And the only games I played on the 64, because my buddy owned it, was like WWE No Mercy and WCW versus NWO Revenge and stuff like that. So I don't really have the love or the background of like Zelda. So like I look at Breath of the Wild, and while it looks incredible, like I like the graphical style, it doesn't pull me in because I don't know anything about the world.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. You could actually jump into that because that plays different than any other Zelda game.
It plays different,
way different than any of them.
We were literally just talking about the fact with Zelda is outside of Breath of the Wild and I think maybe Wind Waker timeline, you can play any Zelda game and not have to have context to any other Zeldas. It's not like a Kingdom Hearts where you have to play them in order and you have to play them on either where they launched or in the special editions. Otherwise, none of it's going to make sense.
It still doesn't make sense, but go on.
Yeah, I agree. It's Kingdom Hearts complicated. But the cool thing is you can play whatever game you want, and then if you choose to play the different games later on, then you can kind of puzzle piece aspects together and read up on it. It's fun. It's like it's a puzzle that still has pieces missing, and I don't even think they intended for it to be a puzzle, but now that they realize that so many people want it to be a puzzle, they're making games to fill in those pieces, if that makes sense. So it's really smart they did the trilogy.
Like Breath of the Wild, it's like, to be honest, people say that it's not like a Zelda game. It actually is. It's actually based off of Zelda 1. The original Zelda was not about elaborate, crazy dungeons and the original Zelda, they just plopped you in somewhere and you just ran around and you just figured things out. And that's how Breath of the Wild is. It's even like the title screen, and even like when you first go into it, it's just like the original Legend of Zelda, where if you look at the manual, he's looking outside of like the kingdom and everything like that, and there's this big old huge world, and that's kind of how like the exploration of just finding stuff on your own. That's like the whole theme of the game. It's just like you kind of just
like
go wherever. Yeah, you just gotta go do whatever you want, Whereas I think that the other Zelda games would probably be a little bit more like, you probably might not like those even more because they have like really like weird like Zelda traditions from Ocarina of Time and up in terms of getting a certain weapon, fighting a certain like boss that has this, going here in this order. It's kind of, they try to make it seem as if it's like open, you can do a bunch of stuff like whenever you want, but that's not the case. You gotta fight certain things in an order, So,
right. No, I mean I own the game, and I always planned on playing it at some point. I'm much more interested in Metroid. Like I love Metroid, the Metroid Prime trilogy. And when Metroid Prime 4 was announced for the Switch, that was like one of the reasons I was like, oh, I gotta get the Switch because I love Metroid. But I mean, it was just a JPEG, and what was that, like 4 years ago now? It's like 3 years ago now.
Things are going well.
Like, oh man, you got
Metroid. You got JPEG baited, dude.
Yeah, I
did. If you stream it sometimes, I'll just say, if you stream it sometimes, you could totally clickbait the title and be like, Zelda Virgin plays Breath of the Wild for the first time.
You can get so many views. I don't like Zelda. I've never played it, but I'm playing it for the first time. You'll just see people rushing in there to watch you and like make fun of you.
Yeah.
Nate, what's the one Zelda game he should play though?
Everyone should play Link to the Past.
That is right. Thank you.
Is that the one that was just on the Switch, like the remake?
No,
It's
Super
right now.
NES Awakening.
That's Link's
It's from
Awakening. I love that.
it's from the Super Nintendo, Rand. So
Yeah.
that's the one, the system you said you didn't have, but
Yeah,
it's on the Nintendo Online service.
That's my gaming shame, man. I have never played an SNES game, not a single one. I didn't own the system. I didn't play anything on it.
But at least you're brave enough to admit it. Like I didn't grow up with an Xbox. I've literally never owned an Xbox. So it's like
Yeah, but if you say that in the gaming community, look at Max right now. He's like, what? How do you not? You've never
owning a
played an
Super. Look, my name is Dreamcast Guy. It's printed on my hat, and even I had a Super Nintendo.
I mean, I you know, my parents bought me and my brother a Genesis. I mean, what can I say?
Super Metroid, my man. You like Metroid? I mean, Metroid Prime is different, but Super Metroid,
Yeah.
you should check.
I actually never played Super Metroid. I played the original.
You said you never played a single Metroid game, or never played a
Those
single
are all
Super
those
game.
are all games on that Super Nintendo app too on the Switch. Like they're all like there's
That's
like
true.
a bunch of Super Nintendo games on there that have actually aged pretty well.
Maybe Rand, you should just do the streaming thing and be like.
I would watch the hell
The
out
funny
of
thing
that.
is, most of the Super Nintendo games are you can beat them in a lot of them in one sitting.
That's true.
Not Link to the Past. That's multiple scenes probably, but like there are a lot of ones on there you can beat in a couple of hours.
Rand would rage quit Link to the Past.
That's content.
He's gonna rage quit that crap, dude.
I almost rage quit Pokemon, man. Like, but that was for charity. I had to keep on playing it.
You beat Pokemon? Which one? Sword or Shield?
The one Sword or whichever one I bought.
Oh,
Sword.
you're ready for Link to the Past. You're good.
I wanted to quit that game so much though, but it was for charity.
I know,
Now
but
they're trying to get me to play Animal Crossing now, and I'm not playing Animal Crossing.
Rand played Animal Crossing. Heck
No,
yes.
not happening.
You can set your room up with all Xbox stuff.
Do you not like smiling? Is that like a rule of yours to not enjoy things?
You probably would find that game to get very like as you go.